Well, hi everybody. This is DearMamaSal, and it's amazing, isn't it, that just every time I'm just about to broadcast, some technical glitch happens. So, welcome to the broadcast. We are here on a Friday lunchtime, and just in case you are new to the broadcast, let me just quickly explain. We do 3 broadcasts a week. The Friday lunchtime Pacific time one is a skills one where we learn something. The Friday evening one at 7 o'clock Pacific is one where we laugh together. And then on Sunday at 3:30, we do a third one, which we call the Soul Sunday. We just almost meditate on a Sunday, take it very easy, and try and regroup ready for the beginning of the week. So today it's a skills broadcast, and what we're going to be talking about today is how to deal with shock. And the reason that I wanted to do this is I'm pretty sure that we all are going to experience that sometime in our lives, or more importantly, maybe somebody we love is going to experience that sometimes in our lives. And so I just want to make sure that we are, I just want to make sure people can see this because I had to change the link quickly. So until I get confirmation, I don't want to go forward. Nothing like talking to yourself. But let me just explain while I'm waiting for confirmation on that. There we go. There's Jody. All right. So the whole thing about shock is that it has an effect on our bodies and our minds. And I just wanted to make sure that we all are aware of why it happens. And then also I wanted to make sure that we're aware that, what are some good practices for you to do if you have shock, because we can't control getting the shock, but we can control what we do once we have it. And that's what I wanted to talk about. All right. I just want to make sure that we appear to be all Geo for Go. So that's awesome. Thank you to Jody for that. And now I'm going to just get up the broadcast itself for you so that I can concentrate on that. All right, today, what I want you to be aware of is that everybody will have shock in their life. Now, what causes shock, I think, is important to understand as well. For example, an event might not be shocking to you, but it could be shocking to somebody else. And, so it doesn't matter whether anybody else gets shocked by it. It's just like, what do you do when you get a shock? All right. So I actually did a bit of research into shock, and it really is a psychological reality. And they say, and let me just get the quote up for you. Psychological shock is when you experience a surge of strong emotion and a corresponding physical reaction in response to a typically unexpected stressful event. Now, how many of you can relate to that? And so that to me is really an important one. Um, so that you understand that the event is out of our control, but we get to control our reaction. But initially, we will react, all right? And so, what I want to do is during this broadcast, explain to you why our reactions are quite normal in the get-go, but how the if you can understand the process, you will be able to get control of it faster. And I'm pretty sure you'd all like that. By the way, if you do not follow us, please make sure you subscribe and click the bell do all those sort of things. The bell merely means that when I'm going to go up on a broadcast, they will advise you. And if you're not following us on Facebook and Twitter, you might want to do that. But why? Because we use Facebook particularly as our sort of message board. If anything's happening, good, bad, or indifferent to any of the viewers, and they'd like to share it, because we're an extended family of people that get together, then that's where we put it. So if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with the various members of the group, then that's where to do it. So we're going to be doing 2 case studies today. And that is also important because they come from 2 completely different areas of shock. And I'm hopefully going to make sure that you can see that the shock is the issue, but the process of dealing with it has a pattern. All right. So first of all, I had a shock to do with my house, and then Jody had a medical shock. And so in both cases, I'd like you to hear what our reaction was, and then how we got out of the panic of it, and know that if you practice what you hear, you also will be able to do that as well. And as I said to you, that what may shock you might not shock the next person. I'd like to suggest that your level of emotional intelligence will also determine how long you stay in shock. I think that would be pretty fair to say. For example, if Jody, I'm pretty sure if you had received that news of the biopsy that you had to have, if you'd received that the first time, the shock would have been more difficult to handle than it was the second time. And so that's what we want to talk about, that, we actually, if we live normal lives, we will be in shock and we will learn how to deal with it. But hopefully some of the tips you're going to hear today will help you deal with it more quickly without having to have too much experience of it. So what I'd like you to understand is that the whole thing about what happens, and maybe we can just talk generally here. The first thing you're probably going to need to understand is our bodies, if you don't already know this, have an automatic, that is the word, automatic. We don't control it. It's like blinking your eyes. We have an automatic reaction in our bodies, and that is called the flight or fight, or fight and flight response. It's a natural response. We don't control it. It happens without any help from us at all. Your body will automatically prepare you for a fast, thoughtless action. And it's amazing. For example, blood rushes to your muscles. Your limbs are ready for you to spring into action. We tend to hyperventilate, and which then leads to the cognitive symptoms of feeling a bit spacey and foggy. So if you have a shock and you suddenly feel a little bit disoriented, quite normal. All right. And the reason is because all this adrenaline has rushed in to your system and is preparing you to either get up and fight, like the caveman would have done, or, run like mad. And so that, if you can understand that first feeling that is slightly groggy, all right, is quite normal. It's your body reacting to what your mind has been told by either what it heard or what it saw, what it felt. It's quite a normal reaction. So the surge of adrenaline is normal. The brain fog is normal. I don't know about any of you, but sometimes you can get almost an out-of-body feeling, like you're sort of not in this reality. You're looking down on the problem rather than quite normal. Some people will get a tightening of the chest, quite normal. For some of us, we might immediately react with anger. an extreme anger at that. For example, if you see a child at risk, you won't have time to think it through. Your body will instinctively get you to react, but your first reaction will be an angry one, possibly, because you're trying to save a life here. And if any of you have had any of those moments, you will totally understand it. I just want to mention for a second before I go on that if I've missed anybody's birthday this week, please forgive me. As some of you know, I'm busy working on the website at the moment, and that's where my database is. And I just can't get to it as well as I would have liked to be able to check on everybody's birthdays. So I please accept my apologies if I'm missing birthdays while we get it fixed. I'm at the uh, on somebody else's timetable because they are helping me do it. All right, so the important thing is to understand those first few things, all right? The first few things are quite normal, all right? Because your body prepares you for fight or flight. Very, very important that you understand. All right. So I'm going to start with my story. Uh, and then I'm going to go to Jody's. And the first thing I want to explain to you is what happened to me. And um, there'd just been a showing of my house. And for those of you who don't know, I'm in the process of selling my house. Uh, and I happened to look up and I saw a dust bunny. And it was in my dining room. And I thought I had cleared all the dust bunnies, on a regular basis, obviously, we all do. But I'd missed one. And it was a sort of slightly to the right of the light over my dining room table. Now, if any of you have seen pictures of the dining room table, I have a very big and heavy light fixture above my glass table. And so I'm normally pretty careful when I dust around there. So I went to dust the dust bunny off the ceiling, and somewhere in my peripheral, upmarket way of saying side vision, somewhere in my peripheral vision, I saw water. And I thought, that's strange. you know, I wonder what that's about. And then my logic sort of kicked in. And my logic was, oh, maybe while they were doing the showing, somebody needed a glass of water and they sat down um, and then spilled a bit. And I thought, well, you'd think if they spilled a bit, they would have tidied that up before they left, but apparently not. And it wasn't very much. It was about this much, I would think. And so then I grabbed a face cloth. I use old face cloths to clean things with. And I got a face cloth to wipe it down. And then I went back to dusting the dust bunny. And I dusted the dust bunny and I thought, well, while I'm here, let me dust the light fixture as well. And as I dusted the light fixture as well, I moved it, which happens, and I saw there was water on the light fixture. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but that's a whole different ball of wax. And in an instant, all that stuff happened. I went into shock. I don't mind telling you, I went into a level of terror and I went into a level of sadness. For water to be dripping off my light fixture means I've got a leak. somewhere that I was not aware of. And when you're selling your house, that's not something that you want to know about. Now, at this point, yeah, Jody is saying terrifying. Yep. It was just like, it really was. But what I did was, luckily, in that instant that it happened, and I could feel the adrenaline rush and everything else, the first thing I said to myself was, no. I don't know if any of you can relate to this. This is called the cycle of loss, and I want to go through it with you because it happens so often in things when we hit this sort of stuff. And Jody will be able to relate to this as well. And the first thing, of course, is I got to put shock here. Whatever the shock is, it doesn't really matter. But the first thing we do is we go into denial. And, it was like, no, please tell me that. Please tell me that I didn't just see what I thought I saw. It was just like, no, really? The next one that some of you will relate to is you then move into anger. And I don't mind telling you that I used a 4-letter word that wasn't help. Because how can this happen to me? I've been so busy doing everything I hope I can, to sell my property. And now suddenly this is like, I'm pretty angry about this. Then the third thing is, I don't know if any of you relate to this one. It's like a depression and great sadness. It was just, how can this happen? I don't understand. It's like a confused sort of feeling. It's not the anger thing, but now it's sort of like, how would I relate to that? I'm trying to think the words that I felt. How did I feel? I just felt depleted. Yeah, yeah, I felt depleted. I think that would be the word. Okay, and then there is bargaining. So because you're going, make it not true. Do any of you know that one, which is like, please God, make that? Yeah, I found God at that moment. Please God, make it not true. Yeah, that didn't work very well either. And eventually, I got to acceptance. All right, which it was true. All right, so that is quite a normal pattern. Ending up with acceptance, quite a normal pattern. And I'm certain when we talk about Jodie's one, she will also be able to relate to that, how she went through different points of that. And that can take 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years to complete that process. Depending on your emotional intelligence, I'd like to suggest. Because if you are pretty emotionally aware, then you recognize what's happening and you can deal with it. Jodie is saying she was swimming in a murky sea of emotion for a while. Yeah, we're going to talk to your reactions when we tell your story, so we can get it in more detail, Jodie. But you relate to what happened to me, I'm sure. So the first thing I want to say is that I could feel my heart rate jump, was the first thing. Um, I I don't mind telling you that without my feeling that I had got to depression, um, tears were starting to fall out of my eyes. Right? It wasn't something I controlled. It was just happening. And then I realized that I awfulized. I wonder if any of you relate to that. I made the problem far bigger than it was. My mind panicked, and in this anger phase, it panicked as well, and it presumed that there was a dirty great hole in my roof, then my whole roof would need to be re-roofed. And when you get into logic again, you will go, no, maybe that's just a bit of sealer that is wearing out, that can be resealed. It's like, I don't know what the problem is. I'm gonna deal with it. So this all was going on. And then I'm going, okay, so, but I awfulized it, I made it far bigger than it was. And I'm going, I don't have the money to re-roof. All right. I don't have that money. And then I'm going, think. Stop awfulizing and think. First of all, and my mind's trying to work out, where am I going to get the money? Where am I going to get the money? And then I said, stop. First, find out what the problem is and how much that's going to cost to get fixed. That's your first step. Where you find the money is not your first step. Now, does that make sense to everybody? Identifying what the problem is. Now, I already know that I've got a leak on a skylight. All right. So I don't think that the leak that I saw is necessarily related to the skylight. So I need somebody to go up and have a look and see whether it possibly is. Is there any way for water that is coming through where the skylight is leaking slightly for it to be running down a joist or whatever you call it, and then following the lead, down into my light fixture. I don't mind telling you there was a bigger panic about, electricity and water meeting each other. Yeah, that didn't please me too much either. But, again, I need to get somebody to look at it to find out what's going on. So I then dropped worrying about everything else. Does that make sense? It's like, and first things first, the first thing is find out what the problem is. Then you can deal with everything else. How? I don't know yet, but let's first of all find out what it is. So I have phoned a roof repair company, and they're coming to the house tomorrow. And then we will move on and take the next step. So I'm hoping that this shock to my system makes sense to you guys. All right. First, like, what is that? Then no, please tell me I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. And all that reaction. And so if you can recognize that, and I felt it in my throat. I'm pretty sure my eyes, if you could have seen me, my eyes would have been out on stalks. Um, I was frozen in that moment, or almost numb. Jody, did you have that? I'm going to be going through your story now, but did you feel frozen at all when you first heard? Let me start with Jody's story, and maybe we can then do the sort of meld the two experiences together. Um, Jody went for, and Jody, correct me where I get this not 100% right. I'm trying to do the best I can with what I understand. Jody, you went for a routine mammogram, and just so that you know, Jody does have history of cancer. And she went for a routine mammogram, and they took the first set of x-rays, and then they did, "Oh, we've seen something we don't like the look of. We'd like to take a second set." Now, I've had that happen to me many times, and so when I heard that, I realized that, for me, that happens to me fairly regularly because of whatever it is going on in my boobs. But then I realized that, if I were Jody and I had a history of cancer, that would set up every alarm bell. In fact, I want to tell you, even in my case, if I get asked to do a second set of x-rays, there is a slight rising of uh, slight increase in my adrenaline. Like, it's not perfectly clear. It is a little foggy for them to be able to clear me. And so, but because I've got experience of that happening probably 2 or 3 times, and they've taken second ones, I don't go into a whole lot of panic. And by the way, I'm always talking to people at the mammography place who are sitting there waiting for a second one, and I go, "You know something? They have taken second ones of me at least 3 or 4 times, and so far so good. Everything's been fine. So just because they're calling for a second one doesn't mean that you've got a major problem going on." So Jody has experience of cancer, so you can imagine that the moment she heard it wasn't perfectly clear, Jody, when they said to you, "We need a second set of X-rays," um, I'm pretty sure you could feel that it was not too much fun for you. All right, this is like, "Oh no, not again." And then the story got worse for her because following the second set of X-rays, they now called for a biopsy. Now, I don't want to use too many medical terms here for people who don't know, but biopsy means that they are going to, whichever breast it was that was a problem, they are actually going to go in and just take a little bit of, I call it the invasion of the body snatchers. They're going to take out a little bit of the skin, actually deeper than the skin. They're going to go in and take out some of the tissue. That's a biopsy. And what they're looking for is they can obviously see a lump. And what they want to know is this lump a cyst? Now, what is a cyst? A cyst is a bump that if you prick it, it's got pus inside it, right? And so it's just a infected pore sometimes, or an infected lump, but it's not dangerous. It is just it's like if you got a pimple. All right. So a cyst is, I get cysts on my back a lot. So first of all, they can do a biopsy, if they go to cut out that piece of tissue and they touch, where that cyst is, and they touch that, it will shoot out pus. So they know that, okay, that's a cyst. So Jody knows that. The second is that it's a lump that isn't a cyst, but it's benign. Now, there's a nice big term for you. Benign is, actually, I should have got the perfect definition. Jody, can you just look that up for us while I carry on with the story? Basically, what benign means, and I'll get the official definition, is that yes, it is a lump, but it's not one that's going to cause any major problems. So that's the easiest way until I get the official definition of it. The third thing is that it is a lump, and that lump is caused by cancer. Now, you can imagine with a history of cancer, and by the way, Jody was told um, that because of the cancer that she had, that she was now high risk for breast cancer. Even though she'd beaten the cancer she had, she was still at high risk for breast cancer. So you can imagine Jody didn't have to take too big a leap to go from, oh gosh, second X-ray required to biopsy required. And I don't blame her for being, in a state of shock. All right. So Jody says benign of a disease, right? It's not harmful in effect. In particular, of a tumor, it is not malignant, i.e., it is not cancerous. All right. Again, I added the IE. So it is a tumor, but it's not a dangerous one. Make sense? Let me put that away before I play with that too much. All right. So uh, the interesting thing that Jody told me was that even though she went into shock, it wasn't a total shock to hear this possibility because of what they had told her with her other cancer. That because you've got history, you are susceptible now to be high risk for breast cancer. And I'm pretty sure that every time Jody has to go for a mammogram, that is her biggest fear. That would be normal, human nature. So I asked Jody to write to me and let me know what her reactions were. And this is what she told us. And Jody, again, please correct me if I get it wrong. She was saying that the days before going in for the biopsy, she felt the anxiety starting to creep in. But she had a routine, all right? So she knew that just going to the biopsy itself was going to be stressful on her. And what she did was she had a routine to stay as calm as she could. There is no way she's going to be totally calm, all right? But just hearing the news, Jody, all right? Just hearing, yes, we need a biopsy. What was your reaction then? That's what I would like to know. Did you start with denial? Oh, please tell me that's not true. It's somewhere in there. Um, were you angry for a split second? It's not fair, you know. Um, did you then feel that moment of sadness? I thought I had this beat. And then did you bargain at all with God? Like, okay, God, please, let this be clear, please, and I will blah, 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 fill in whatever. Um, before you said, okay, fine, I need to have this done. So while Jody is answering my question on that, what she's saying is the days before the procedure, I felt the anxiety start to creep in. I had a routine. I was practiced deep breathing. She kept saying a little prayer. She spoke to her husband, Lionel. And then they worked on distraction. Really important. Distraction. If you are still in shock, distraction is not a bad idea. If you're not quite in the moment of dealing with something literally, in other words, Jody had to wait to have the biopsy done. Now the trick was to distract. If you remember when I thought I had cancer a couple of years ago, my distraction was to paint. And that's what I did to keep my mind occupied rather than awfulizing and going, I'm going to die, because we're all dying anyway. But what I did was I distracted my brain, and that's what Jody said, and they distracted it. Doing Christmas movies and YouTube movies, and Jody said even including the Soul Sunday broadcast, which we put together as a sort of a nice thing for people to listen to if they are feeling a bit stressed. Okay, so Jody is saying yes, she definitely recognized denial. She cannot remember being too angry because she did expect this at some point. Um, because she knew it was going to be part of her life to always know that she could expect it. She said she did bargain, yes. But then she makes the point that her prayers brought her to acceptance. So here's the thing I want you all to understand, because I was in very close contact with Jody at the time. And luckily, I really trusted her ability to process this for herself. Um, and and so the thing that you can ask yourself is this: does denial make the problem any better? Is going into denial going to fix my leak problem? No. Jody was saying, I'm so lucky to have had the support that I'm blessed with. My thoughts and prayers were with others that may not have the same. It made a difference, the support that I have. Thank you, Sal and Laura. No, it's a pleasure, Jody. So understand this, that um, denial doesn't fix a problem. Denial was not going to help Jody, and denial was not going to help me. You see, what we need is knowledge. Facts. Remember, let go of the emotion. I need the facts. What is causing the leak is a fact. It's a question, but what I want is the fact so I can deal with it. Jody's saying denial just keeps us from getting down to what needs to be addressed. Right, Jody? So whether you liked it or not, you needed a biopsy. And whether you like it or not, that biopsy has a very strong possibility of coming in that you have cancer. That's a fact. You see, the faster you can get to that level, the the in a way, the healthier you are, right? And that's why I say I think it takes a certain level of emotional intelligence to be able to process this stuff the way that you did. And I want to really congratulate you on what you did. Jody also said that organization was also another thing that she used to defeat her anxiety. Um, what they did is they planned for every detail of her responsibility for the day that she had to go for the biopsy. They don't have a car, so she needs to organize a bus. But what if that bus is late? You cannot afford not to be at that appointment. So she made sure she had a plan B of how she was going to get to that appointment if the bus didn't turn up the way it was meant to. The reason she needs a special bus, is because Jody is in a wheelchair. So she also did a lot of research to improve her knowledge. She watched a lot of videos about biopsies, so she would know what to expect. Very important. I remember, Jody, when I had to go in for a stress test, I watched a lot of videos about stress tests, so I knew exactly what to expect. Aren't we lucky to have YouTube? I want to tell you. So Jody is saying, I wanted to control what I could because I felt less anxiety approaching it that way. I think it would be fair to say, Jody, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but knowledge reduces anxiety. I might still be equally scared of the result, but let me make sure that I don't have to worry about what's going to happen. All right. Now, for example, the moment that I got somebody booked to come in and have a look at my roof problem um, tomorrow, my anxiety dropped. Knowledge is power, Jody is saying. I absolutely, I think knowledge is power and soothing. All right. Because now you know what you're dealing with. Remember, don't deal in emotion, deal in facts. All right, so here's another thing that Jody said to me. She knew that body positioning required arm over my head. You have to sort of go like this, okay, for them to do that procedure. And she was going to spend quite a time on the table. Now, amongst her other problems, Jody suffers from fibromyalgia, and she knew that this was also going to cause a fibromyalgia flare. Jody, could you give us the Reader's Digest version of what fibromyalgia is? I'm going to say that you have a condition that puts all your nerves on hyper alert, because I don't know how better to describe it. So if you have a way of describing it for people who don't know what fibro is. And by the way, it's a lot of my viewers suffer from it, so that's why I'm sort of much more aware of it than I was. And she said that a serious fibromyalgia flare. In other words, this is a condition that flares up under stress, I believe, under stress or under, if you get hurt or something, this will flare up. So what she said was she made sure that she had anti-inflammatory meds where, she made sure she had them in the house, um, ready for when she came back from this. Plus she had extra pillows. She had, made sure all her soft clothes were ready. She had a heated blanket. And most importantly, she prepared her mind. All right. Panicking was not going to help her during the biopsy, right? She needed to be able to relax during the biopsy for them to be able to do the best job. And I thought that was incredible that she worked through all of that. And Jody said to me in the report that she wrote me, I found that taking control of whatever aspects I could control was helpful. And also just focusing on taking the next step, right? Don't worry about what's going to happen after the biopsy. Work on what you need to do to get to the biopsy. All right. And she said, focusing on taking the next step and counting my blessings. Thank goodness they found it this early. And thank goodness I live in 2019 where my chances of survival are greater. All those things, be grateful. Um, and she said she used counting her blessings as a way of countering when the fear got to her, which it did, and that would be quite normal. All right, so fibromyalgia. Jodie's giving us her definition, or knowing her, she might even have research. All over body pain that is triggered by even the slightest touch and movement. It causes the entire body to go into fight or flight mode. All right, so you remember what I said at the beginning about that fight or flight, your high adrenaline? Wow, let me go back to that. Jody, I need to go back to 26.26 when I come back if I forget. All right, let's go back to that fight or flight. Here we go. All right, so this is what fibro does all the time. Her body prepares her for fast, thoughtless action. The blood rushes to the muscle. Um, s- she tends to, she will hyperventilate as well. Plus, she goes spacey, and the brain goes into a fog. 26, right, Jody? Um, so, but also what you didn't mention, yeah, that she also gets, because of this, she gets all over pain. And that is really the thing that everybody talks about is the all over pain. It's like having the flu on steroids, right? It's like serious flu pain and total exhaustion, Jody is adding. Yes. All right. So let us go on. She also said, allowing myself the time I need to recover from the flare without guilt is another thing I've learned is important. Self care without guilt. Think about that. Self care without guilt. It's okay to go and take a nap. It's okay to not do as much today. All right? Give yourself permission. And also, it is so important for you to understand that you would say this to your best friend. You know, for goodness sake, Lower your expectations of yourself if you are in shock. Would that be fair, Jody? When you are in that level of shock, or that, something as big as this coming up, it's really important to be aware that it is important to look after yourself. All right. To get yourself as quiet as you can. You remember she said that she realized that she needed to look after her mind. Jody's saying that flu on steroids is not a bad way of describing fibro. Okay. So she went on to say, oh, Jody's also saying it's really important as well to voice your needs to those around you. Yes, in other words, make sure people know that you might be a little not overly sensitive, but a little more sensitive. Would that be fair, Jody, at this time? Maybe a bit more snippy, maybe a bit less tolerant, maybe, you know, because part of your mind is trying to deal with what it knows it needs to deal with. Jody said, I went through the cycle, but strangely enough, I was able to get from denial to acceptance quite quickly. It became very real after the second mammogram. She went back for a second one, right? And then she had an ultrasound. When I was told they definitely needed to be a biopsy. Now you can imagine, right? I imagine I must have cycled through fairly quickly because of my previous experience. Yeah, I think so as well. I think, the first time you hit that problem in your life, you would have reacted differently. The second time, the process, and therefore you would cycle it more quickly. All right. Um, and she said, it wasn't completely unexpected that the mammogram showed a suspicious mass, because I was told in 2015, when she had the other cancer, that I'm at high risk for breast cancer. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't make it any easier, but it is your reality. Now then, Jody is also adding to this. She says that she found herself more reactive, unable to do her usual daily routines. Her coping skills, could change drastically. Things she normally could handle, maybe stress-wise, she wasn't as able to when she was in this place of shock and recovery. So I think it's really important, Jody, that you understand it as well as you do. All right. Now, the good news. I do have good news for all of this, right? The good news is that just before I went on the broadcast, Jody let us know that the tests came back and they are clear, right? At this time, there are no cancer cells in that area that they took the biopsy of. And that was really, really important. Um, or, did I describe that well enough in terms of the result? And the reason I say that is because I had two biopsies done on my back. And, because the first one, they did find that they had some cells in there, but they hadn't got them all. And they went back for a second one. And the second one, they didn't find any. So, you know what I mean? It was like they did a small rotor the first time. And the second time they went back for a bigger one. And when they took the bigger one, it was fine. Yes, and it just needs to be monitored, as does my back, Jody. All right? Thank you, Beth. Beth is giving us the medical definition. They say it had clean margins. Okay? Clean margins. Okay, let me just try and draw this for people, because yeah, we know what it means because we've been there and done that, right? Okay. So let's say that this is the mass right here. Okay. Got that? And then they go in to do a biopsy. Ah, Beth is saying she had skin cancer, so she understands it. That's what I had as well. All right. Um, so what they did is they went in for my first biopsy, but they don't know because they can't see. They don't know how much to take, right? So what my doctor did, he took this much. But when they did the testing, they obviously still found that on the edge of the bit that he took, there was still cells. So the second time, he took this much. And now, as you can see, on the outside where he cut, there were no more cells. Does that help describe it for people? And that is called clean margins. The first one did not have clean margins. The second one did. Okay? So I think that's really an important thing for people to understand. The reason that I wanted to do this broadcast is because everybody is going to have to deal with shock in their lives. And I cannot believe that I have done all these broadcasts and never done it before. And that's what amazed me. I went, I don't think I've ever done one on what happens to you when you go into shock. But what I'm hoping is that if you go into shock now, that you will process it differently. You will expect to go through the cycle of loss. By the way, you can go into shock when you lose your car keys, right? If you are in a real hurry for an important meeting and you can't find your car keys, you will go into a level of shock. You see, it's all about degree. I don't think that level of shock will pump as much adrenaline in as when you see a child walking into a road and there's a car coming. That's a different level of shock. All right. But what the reason you can get to the child as quickly as you can is because of that rush of adrenaline and all that blood pumping through your system. Um, so if you can understand what all this is about, hopefully it will help you deal with it better. The one thing that I have to tell you, I kept saying to myself is stop. Do not awfulize. Do not imagine they've got to rip the whole roof off to fix this problem. Maybe it's just a little bit of silicone that needs to go somewhere and the problem is fixed. So do not panic. Do not awfulize. Don't make it worse. Don't make it so awful. Just deal with one thing at a time. And let's first of all find out what is true. Remember Jody going in for her biopsy. She has three options. It could be a cyst. They're going to know that as soon as they touch it, because if they touch it and it goes spurt, that's a cyst. But imagine what it was like when they did that and it didn't do that. Now she's got a 50-50 chance, right? First of all, she had a 33% chance of cancer. Why? Because there was a 33% chance that it was a cyst. Now they take that one away. Now they're left with, it could be, it definitely is a tumor, but is it a benign one that's not a problem, or one that is a problem? And so she realized that those were her two options. You can bargain all you like, but you've only got those two possibilities, right? So the interesting thing is she waited. Jody, I know that you were fearful because that would be human nature. But how, if you could, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared were you waiting these, I think it was 3 or 4 days, right? We had to wait for the result. On even 1 to 5, how scared were you? Sorry, allergies, and I did take a pill. By the way, talking about allergies, and I did take a pill. Um, Kerry was telling us this week that she buys her antihistamines at the Dollar General and can get 350 tabs for $7. And it's exactly the same stuff as Benadryl. All right, Beth is saying, I went into shock walking into the hospital room after my dad passed. Yes, I freaked out screaming and hyperventilating. So they had to remove me from the room and give me a shot to calm down. All right, so do you understand? The shot is to lower your adrenaline, I think. But yes, absolutely, Beth, right? This is an unexpected, even if you were expecting him to die, all right, the shock that he actually did, right, will send you into that whole um process. You know, the one that I read out about what happens to your blood rushing and all that sort of things. And you go spacey. You actually could have passed out from being that spacey. Thank you for adding that, Beth. Really important. All right, Jody said 4 days she had to wait for the results. I had episodes of panic that were a 5, sometimes in the middle of the night. Mostly it was about level 3. Now, Jody, isn't that amazing that you can see that now, right? That you can see that you were able to bring your panic level from red alert 5 down to the midway. You were always going to be scared. That's human nature. Yeah, Jody's saying to Beth that, Beth, I can so relate. I had a similar experience when my father passed. And Beth is saying, yes, I don't remember too much for 2 weeks afterwards. It was like I was there, but not. That's the out of body experience. Yes, right? That's shock. Right? And that's why they always say, Beth, which is after a major traumatic experience, be that medical or physical or emotional, after a shock experience, do not make any major decisions. And quite honestly, for example, after a death or something like that, they say try not to make a major decision for a year on your own. You know, you might have to make them, with your lawyers or whatever, but don't go selling the house before you have to or whatever, because the chances are your mind is not processing properly. Yeah, and Jody also said, Beth, I was totally out of body. Yeah, I agree with that. I want to tell you, for a moment, a split second, when I saw that water, Beth, um, I also um, had that out of body experience for a split second, and then I went, no, that's not helping me. That's what I kept saying. That's not helping me. Panic is not helping. And I found that really helped me to keep saying that to myself. Panic cannot fix this. Panic is, cannot fix this. I need to get control and take the steps that are needed to fix it. Then the first thing is I need to find out what it is, one step at a time. All right. So Jody's saying she passed out at her mother's funeral. Yeah. So have any of you felt it? This shock? Have any of you been betrayed and felt that whole shock cycle as well? Because what I want to make sure that the viewers understand is this shock can hit you at different levels. Medically, by the way, if you, I was riding once, for example, and I had on my horse, I had jumped over a low fence into my jumping arena, which I always did, you know. And it was, you know, it wasn't a low jump, but it was, not a very high one either. But what happened was whilst I was in my show jumping arena, um, my horse decided to take a jump one stride before I expected him to. And because he was 16-1 thoroughbred, he rose up all that weight of his, and I had instead of lifting my body with him, which I would have done if I'd been expecting that leap at that time, my gravity was still down into my legs. Because that's where my weight was, into my butt and my legs. And when he lifted that whole mass of his weight up, he lifted it against my feet and my stirrups, and my one ankle popped. And I don't mind telling you, all I could think about was I've got to land. What I did was I made sure in that split second, don't know how my mind worked on that, but I need to get my foot out of the stirrup because I don't want to land against an already broken ankle. And so, I was really pleased that my mind was to be able to get over the pain and into reality so quickly, literally in that moment. And I did manage to, but now I got a bigger problem, which is the only way out of the arena is another jump. Because I jumped in, and I can't get off the horse and open the gate because I got a broken ankle. I'll never be able to get back on the horse again to get home quickly. And I don't want to tell you that riding with a broken ankle is not pleasant. And what made it even worse was I was wearing what they call Harry Hall riding boots. And they are extremely expensive. And when I eventually got home, I managed to get somebody to help me off the horse. But now they wanted to cut my boot because they realized my ankle was broken as well. And I said, no, you can't cut the boot. I was already in that much pain. It was just like, don't cut the boot. They said, you got to be joking. I said, no, don't cut the boot. Anyway, probably wasn't my smartest move, but I remember doing that. So Jodi's saying, one thing I found interesting was that even when I felt in control mentally, my body was still betraying that sense of calm, shaking, numb hands, dizziness. Yeah, it was Kermit. Yes, Jodi. Thank you for remembering the name of my horse. Isn't that interesting, right? And that's the whole thing, Jodi. Do you understand what you're getting control of is your mind? Your body's reaction will continue. Why? Because you're still pumping adrenaline. You're still, doing all the fight or flight stuff inside. Plus, you've got fibro. All right. So I think it's really important. I find at the moment I'm coping pretty well, but every now and then it's like, how bad is this problem, Sal? And how are you going to find the money? So, it's a really important thing to understand. So, how many have you understand that you can go into shock just from a change? I can remember working with a friend of mine once, and I was doing a retreat for him with his staff. And somewhere in the reality of chatting to him, I found out that while everybody was at a retreat, people were going into the office and moving everything in the office. And none of the staff knew about it. And I said, "Are you serious? Are you serious that they are going to go back to work on Monday after not having had a restful weekend because they're here on this retreat and working still, and they're going to find their whole life has been disrupted at work?" Do you understand what that will do to their bodies? And he said, well, it's just an easier way to cope with it. And I said, no, easier for you, not easier for them. What you have just told me is you actually don't care about them because they will go into shock. So I want to make sure that you understand what you are going to be faced with on Monday because of the what you decided to do. And I then explained, all the reactions he should expect and not get angry about because it would be human nature for them to react. And part of that was, first of all, denial. What happened? I don't understand. And confusion, right? And then the anger. How dare you do that? You moved my stuff. Some people are very OCD, right? Somebody touching their stuff is as bad as almost as bad as getting raped, to be honest. You know what I mean? It's just like it is serious. If you've got OCD at a high level and somebody moves a pencil, it is traumatic for you. If somebody actually moves everything that is, well, it's not their stuff, it's mine. What do you mean it's yours? Well, it's the company stuff. I'm going, no, they don't see it that way. It's their little space, it's their they control this little part of their environment at work. It doesn't change the fact. And I said, no, I understand that it's your desk, you can move it. But what I'm saying is psychologically, it would have been a nice thing to warn them and give them maybe an hour to clear off the stuff that they were really concerned about and put it away in drawers or do whatever so that it would be safe. That, to me, would be thoughtful. But you didn't do that. So expect what's going to happen. And God forbid if anything was actually broken. So do you understand that that was a shock for people, right? And therefore they will go through the same process. I'm going to do a couple of quotes now about change. Because do you see that my life was going along quite quietly and then I hit something that made my life change? Therefore, I've got to accommodate more stress than I had before. Jody was coping with her life with all the things that she's going on, and she was doing a great job, and then boom, something else added now. It means she's got to change. Um, Beth's talking about skin cancer. She was doing fine, and suddenly they say, don't like the look of that thing on your back, or wherever it was for her. That then now you've got to change. So I thought I'd do some quotes on change and see if that helps anybody at all. Confucius said, only the wisest and the stupidest of men never change. Now, I'd like you to think about that. Why is it that the wisest of men don't change? I think it's because they are so serene in themselves that the world outside them does not affect them. But the stupidest of people don't change because they keep repeating the things that don't work. Right? And so I sort of took me a while to sort of wrap my mind around that. Churchill said, to improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. How many of you have noticed that whilst we've been doing the broadcast about emotional intelligence, your perception, the way you look at things has changed, and the way you react to things has changed, and the way you cope with things has changed. But in order to reach there, you had to do a lot of learning to get to that point. And the more we do, hopefully, the easier this will become. But each requires a little change. I used to be a very untidy person. I have learned to change because it then creates less for me to do if I have to put the house on show. Um, Beth is saying, I made an appointment to have my elbow looked at. It's been 3 months of pain and it's not getting any better. It's not swelling or hot, but it hurts to move it. I just fight through the pain. Yeah, I think it's time. I am pretty certain that if Jody had known that, she would have nagged you to get that done about 2.5 months ago. In the nicest possible way. And I would have asked you, why are you suffering with that pain? What is wrong that is causing the pain? You see, is pain is the body trying to tell you something. Now Beth is saying it's possibly arthritis. Yes. As I think I now have possibly arthritis of my back. Um, Jody's saying the way I process things has drastically changed. By the way, Jody, may I ask, not that I want a good answer, but just out of interest, has it had any effect on Lionel? The way that you are now processing, has it affected the way that Lionel processes? Because what I want to check is the ripple effect. The same thing as, when Beth goes to work with her positive attitude, she is going to have one or two reactions from people. All right. And that will be either, wow, isn't it fun working with somebody with this mental attitude? And the other is the opposite of that. People who are jealous of her ability to do that, will cause more trouble for her. All right, they will sneer at it and not appreciate it. I always said when I got up on stage, people will make their decision whether they like me or not in the time it takes me to walk up onto the stage and get to the microphone. They will have made their decision, and it'll be based on what I'm wearing, how I'm walking, whether I'm smiling or not, my makeup, my hair. They will take that all in very, very quickly, and before I even open my mouth, they will make a decision. And that is human nature. By the way, I also found out, because it is true, that if I trip on the way up the stairs to get onto the stage, some people will, "Oh, is she okay?" And some people will go, "Well, look at that. She can't even get upstairs." It's just human nature. And then I always have a story that I tell about this, which is I can remember once literally, the timing, there'd been a delay on my flight, and the timing was so extreme. By the time I got to this huge conference center, and there were like 7,000 people in that room, um, that they wanted to shift when I spoke to another time. And I said, no, I'm here. I can speak because, that's who I am. And I literally walked up onto stage. I still had my heavy coat on, my winter coat, because it was, in the middle of winter. And literally, as I walked along the stage, I dropped this very expensive coat. And everybody thought it was part of the act. It wasn't. It was just like that was the first time I'd had a chance to get rid of my coat. And I literally left it lying on the stage. Did I care? No. You see, and did people judge me for that? I don't know. Yeah, possibly. Right. Jody is saying about Lionel, he doesn't even know who he's married to anymore. Now he corrects himself after he says maybe. He'll say, Sal says there is no maybe. There is doing something or not doing it. He has changed. Wow. Yeah. And does he feel better for it? Is what I would query. And Frank said, how wonderful it is that nobody needs to wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Do I think that at some level somebody will be helped by this broadcast? Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't do it. And, I didn't presume that Jody was going to let me tell her story, but I did know it was important for other people to hear Jody's story if she cared to share it. Why? Because you can see it's the same story, but magnified, right? It's the same story as I had with the shock, but mine was risk Hers was cancer. Wow, that's interesting. Jody says, I think his confidence has improved greatly since BS, since before Sal. Um, I always think it's funny that the shortening of my name is BS. How ironic is that? Um, you think it has? Think is not a word that I associate with you, Jody. Has it or hasn't it? Now, you all heard me talk about Stephen Hawking last week. Yeah, he's the gentleman that they did that movie about, um, where he had the degenerative disease, and basically the only thing that's really working um, is his mind, really. And he even he can't even speak. He talks through an electronic device. Now, that man didn't lie down and die with that. He turned out to be one of the greatest physicists, whatever, in the world. Um, and that most of us would go, yeah, why live if that has happened to you? Well, no, he had every reason to live. He could still use his mind. Stephen Hawking said, intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. So, Jody, would that be fair to say that what calms you down is your ability to adapt? You didn't say stuck in, I have cancer, or there is a very high probability that I have cancer. You didn't stay stuck there. You went, let me first of all do the tests I need to do to find out. And that's all I'm going to concentrate on is getting the test done. I understand human nature is my brain will go to the next step every now and then, but I, in my conscious time, are going to do everything I can to concentrate on doing what I can to get to the biopsy and find out the truth. You see, isn't it said that the truth shall set you free? Good or bad, the truth will set you free, right? In a way that you will then know what you're dealing with. And Jody has corrected her statement and says that she knows Lionel's self-esteem. She doesn't think anymore. She knows it has changed. Yeah. Now listen to this one. I think this is a beautiful quote, and I don't know who said it, but it's like one day or day one. Two words used in different ways that mean totally different things. One day, blah, 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 blah. Day one. This is what I'm going to do. I think that's a really great quote myself. And the other thing that you heard Jody talk about was the ways in which she distracted herself when she knew change was coming. All right. And the interesting thing was the changes she made were to look after herself better prior to that change because she knew that the change would change the days after. And so therefore she prepared her body by relaxing it and her mind by relaxing it. And Dr. Zeus said this, Jody, and I thought that it was relevant to what you did. Today was good. Today was fun. Tomorrow is another one. Right? Deal with today. Can I do anything to identify the problem in my roof? Yeah, I guess I could get a ladder and go and climb up there. How smart would that be? Do I know what I'm looking for? Could I accidentally make the problem worse? You bet. I'd rather send somebody who knows what they're looking for. So I've decided not to get involved with it. Jody's saying, I focused on two things. One, just take the next step. Two, don't miss sacrifice the joy of the current moment. Oh, don't miss or sacrifice the joy of the current moment for a future maybe that isn't part of my reality yet. Yes, don't miss the joy of today worrying about the possibility of tomorrow. That's what I'm doing as well, Jody. Totally agree with that. Doesn't mean it doesn't come into my mind, but I am, it was interesting because just before, literally a minute before I went onto the broadcast, um, the my realtor wants to do a showing on Sunday. And I just, and they want to do it in the morning when I've said I don't want to do showings in the morning. Um, and it's on a Sunday, it messes with people's lives. So um, I just said, try and get it in the afternoon and I'll make a decision after I finish the broadcast. I'm certain they didn't want to hear that. I'm certain they wanted me to make an instant decision, but I chose not to. It's my right. I'm certain they're angry. It's okay. So I'm hoping that you understand what this is about. Gail Sheehy said, if we don't change, we don't grow. If we don't grow, we aren't really living. So how about that one? How many of you feel that because you've grown in your emotional intelligence over the last year, year that you're living better? You're living a healthier, healthier body and mind, and better life. I must admit, when my left hip started to give me problems, when my left hip started to give me problems, um, I immediately said, okay, fine, I need to use it more, not less, more. And my latest thing, Jody, just so you know, and I haven't quite managed it yet, I'm trying to find out, can I take 2 steps at a time going up the staircase? I am now capable of reaching about 1.5. I haven't got enough flexibility to make it 2 and not be sure that I'm going to fall. And obviously, I don't want to take that risk. But I can do it with my right leg. I can take 2 steps, but with my left leg, and by the way, it's difficult when I do the right leg, even though it has the strength, is because where's the weight? It's on the leg that is more painful. But I'm doing all sorts of little things to try and improve the strength, even though it is, obviously a little bit arthritic now. James Baldwin said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed. Not everything that we face can be changed, right? But nothing can be changed until it is faced." Right? So I could hear tomorrow that I've got a major problem. The same as Jody could have heard this morning that she has a major problem. But until you hear that, it's not true. That's the way, right, Jody? That's what I said to you. Until you hear that, it is not true. There still is hope that it is not true. And I am pretty sure if you are as human as I know you to be, you didn't necessarily, little bit of you agreed with me, but the majority of you going, yeah, but, look at my history. I understand that. But you see, never let go of that little bit of hope. Never let go of that little bit of hope that, yes, but maybe it's fine. Maybe a little tab of silicone will stop what happened uh, with the water. Maybe that's possible. And maybe they can seal the skylight that's leaking and hold it for a year. So not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. I think that is so true. Yes, Jody's saying, yes, that was very true. I was fighting my mind, reliving the radiation. That was a lot of panic. A lot of the panic. Yes, you didn't want to go through radiation again. But you would have done if you needed it, I'm pretty sure. Socrates said, "Let him or her that would move the world first move himself." All right? Until we get clear in ourselves, we can't necessarily do a good job of helping others. So here is Maxime Le Grasset said, "Love change, fear staying the same." Love change, fear staying the same. Jodie's saying, if she had got a negative result from the biopsy, she said, "I have the greatest support. I would navigate through it." Yeah, you see, I think that you would face that reality. I read, in order to prepare for this particular broadcast, I read a lot of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. You've heard me quote her before. She does, has written a great deal about the cycle people go through when they hear they're going to die. All right, and it's really interesting to to study it because it helps us understand that the process, what I said about going through the denial, the anger, the depression, the bargaining, and then the final acceptance. The interesting thing is eventually everybody accepts that they are going to die. I actually accept it right now, right? We're all dying. So, um, if you remember, one of the things that I said when my doctor said to me, "Oh, you are have you're pre-diabetic." Um, or actually, he said, "You're diabetic." My reaction was, "That's a self-inflicted wound." I didn't deny that I was. The facts were that I am. All right. The facts say that that's what it is. The interesting thing is that the diabetes people don't think that I am, right? On their scale. But my doctor says, "Yes, you are." Right? It's interesting. So, but I think part of that is he wants me to understand I need to look after myself like a diabetic. Jodie's saying the hard truth is that I may very well face that in the future. Yes, but I'm not going to sap the joy out of every day for something that doesn't exist yet. I have a joyful life. Jodie, I know you've got a trip planned for Thanksgiving. Did you, because of the biopsy, consider canceling that trip? Because you were aware that today you might hear that you um, are dealing with a whole new ball of wax. Because I thought it amazing. No, and Jodie's answer is no, not one time, no. Uh, Beth, are you still there? I just have a question for Beth. Um, so you see, the thing is this: that imagine if Jodie had cancelled the trip just on what might happen rather than what it was factual. You see, smart money says plan as if everything is fine. If it turns out not to be fine, right? You can make a plan then. Jody's saying no, it was about Lionel and his daddy, not me. That's very, very selfless of you. I am there to support him. He supports me every day. Absolutely. Right? And that is where the great love is with you two, right? You are not selfish in that. But I am pretty sure if you had got a negative response today from your test, that he would totally understand. But mm, the question is, would you have held that information from him? I hope not. Norman Vincent Peale said, change your thoughts and you change your world. Agreed? When you change your thought pattern, you change not only your world, but the people around you. Wayne Dyer said, change the way you look at things and things will look at change. Right? When you change the way you look at things, the things look different. Nothing is so painful to the human mind as a great and sudden change. Fact. But how we deal with it can lessen it. That is the lesson. All right, that's interesting. Jody says, yes, he would have understood. All right. Um, I would have told him no matter what the result was, but we discussed that beforehand. The result was a non issue for the trip. Good. All right. We are no longer able to change a situation. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Remember, right? No amount of panic is going to fix a leak. Panic doesn't fix it. Getting something done fixes it. No amount of complaining fixes a sore hip. Um, I will be going to the doctor in the next week to. The reason I've delayed it is I know I have to go in to get meds, and my A1C is due, and all that. So I'm going in for a mega visit. Um, so you understand that this is like, my hip hurts. No amount of complaining about it is going to stop it. What's going to stop it is medication or proper exercise for it. True? So it's not that the hip has to change. I need to change what I'm doing. My blood sugar um, will not change unless I change the way I eat. Now, the one interesting thing that I really want to talk to my doctor about is what Jody taught me. And, again, it's amazing how we teach one another, isn't it? Um, but, with all the stress that's been happening to me, and I just want a visual of this because it is scary. Look what happened to my weight. And the strange thing is that is not caused by carbs or sugar because I have basically kept those under control. Interesting, huh? Somehow or other, Jody says it's cortisol. Is that right, Jody? That with all the stress that's going on, that my cortisol levels have risen, and that has created um, retention of water and everything else. So I'm now sort of taking a diuretic to try and lose that, and I have lost about 3 pounds of it now, Jody. But I don't. can't take a whole one because then I end up with serious problems. For those who don't know, a diuretic is something that makes you pee more, um, so that I can try and lose some of this swelling. But again, another discussion with my doctor. This is what I was going through. This is what happened to my weight. And I can prove that it wasn't sugar or carbs. That's going to really mess, because that's what I do now. And he'll say to me, um, how are you doing? And the first thing I will show my doctor, over and above, he will take my blood pressure, which he does, every time I go in because of my age. The next thing I do, and I do it every time I go there, is say to him factually, let me just show you. Um, this is my resting heart rate. All right? So I show him it. Now, what that picture tells him is that I have been under stress. But even under stress, my resting heart rate is amazing for somebody of my age. All right? Now, that tells him that my heart is not pumping excessively when it doesn't need to. All right? That basically what you can see, and I think that's important, is I know how to get it back under control. Right? I know that I will be doing a lot, it'll go up sometimes, but I know how to get it back under control. Yeah, he actually does, Jody. It's quite funny. He actually goes, okay, thanks. Because I think it's a better picture. It's not about what is my blood pressure at the moment, but how well do I control that blood pressure? Right? The blood pressure tells you what the heart is physically doing, but how much am I able to control what it needs to do, if you like? So I know that it was really weird. I know that I ate a bit more sugar, but not enough to lump on all those pounds. And I know that I probably had a few more carbs, but not enough to put on that many pounds because I control it pretty well. Yeah, it's Judy. It helps them put the pieces of the puzzle together. I also like to think, Jody, and I could be wrong, that it tells him I care. All right? That tells him I'm keeping track of this. So you don't have to worry too much. Because obviously, if it's out of control, I'm going to be telling him. He knows that. And he knows I know it's important to my health. The same way as a sudden jump in my weight like that, um, Mercury was in retrograde. What can I say? Life is a process. We are a process. The universe is a process. All right? That's every day is a new set of lessons. That's how I look at it. One of the things I said, and Jody, I don't know about you, but one of the things I said when I got the shock was, you must really trust me to be able to cope with stress. That's what I said. You must really trust me to be able to cope with stress. Why? And how many of you know there was that moment where I went, it's not fair. If that deal hadn't fallen through, I wouldn't have to cope with this, and all those sort of things. And I'm going, it is what it is. Just get on with it. It is what it is. Jody, did you say that to yourself? That's interesting. Jody says to me, you are dedicated to your health journey. I know that firsthand. I want to tell you, I joke, I laugh at myself when I see what comes out of my grocery bag these days. Whoever knew I would be excited about a can of beets, because I know I'm going to have it with feta cheese and it's going to taste great. Interesting. I'm getting there slowly, Jody. It's a very difficult process for me. Yeah, Jodie's saying she also did that. Really? You trust me that much? How about this one? The art of life lies in a constant readjustment to our surroundings. Can you change as the situations around you change? And if the answer is yes, then you will be happy. Jody says, it takes time. We are all works in progress. Yes. Jody, I was, eh, almost beating up on myself because I wasn't back to fasting again. And I went, Sal, you're doing just fine. Jody will tell you you're doing just fine. Just keep making the best choices you can with what's going on. When your life is, you know, yeah, as your life gets back under control a bit more, you will you know, be back at full fasting again. At the moment, you're doing as many hours as you can. And that may be only 12, but you know something? You are aware that it's important, and that is good. By the way, Jody, what I'm also concerned about is that I notice that with the amount of stress that when I don't eat now, I can feel the fog and the dizziness um, of blood sugar stuff. And so what I'm actually doing is saying, if you can feel that, you need to find some protein right now. And I do. So, yeah, and that's exactly, Jody's saying no guilt. After this stress passes, it'll go back into place one day at a time, right? Yeah, just now. Yeah, exactly. But I'm going, if I'm feeling dizzy and lightheaded, I obviously need to take some protein. By the way, I've been making my own sausages. That's my new thing. I bought a little sausage mold, and I don't even have casings. I just literally have this sausage mold, and I literally have been taking, um, I've done chicken ones, I've done turkey ones, I've done pork ones, and what I do is with leftover meat now, I turn it into sausages. And into the sausages, I will put a little bit of vegetable, very, a little bit of carrot and onion and some spices and stuff, and a few breadcrumbs, and an egg, a few breadcrumbs just for pack it together. But the incredible thing is, what I have found is that 4 of those sausages will keep me fine for about 6 hours. 4 sausages. Isn't that amazing? And so now what I'm doing is when I go shopping, I change up every week. This week I bought, last week I bought chicken. I just made those yesterday. And then the next thing I will buy, I bought pork and I've made those already. So I've got a choice. I don't have the same type of sausages every day. I just change them up. But isn't that amazing? I also like it because I'm getting the protein, um, and it obviously helps me. Oh, you can also use crushed pork rinds as the breadcrumbs. That's a good idea. Yeah. Will that bind it? I've got some of those, Jody. I think I'll have to check on that. Thank you. Life is a process of becoming, a combination of states have to go through. When people fail, is that they wish to elect the state to remain in. This is a kind of death. Ananias Nin said that. It's like we are all choosing how long to stay in panic. Would that be a fair thing, Jody? Would you say that you chose not to panic for too long? That you realized panic wasn't going to help you? Because that's what I keep saying to myself, which is, itchy nose. Um, Panic is not going to help you here. Feeling sorry for yourself is not going to help you here. Ha- having having a heart attack because you can't cope is not going to help you here. All right? What helps you is to find out what's wrong and deal with it as best you can. And maybe I cannot afford to do what needs to be done. Then I need it in the sale documents to say that there is another problem. And that means I probably am going to have to drop the price even more. But that's reality. Lack of emotion causes a lack of progress and the lack of motivation. Now, that's interesting because you see, to some degree, I've been saying let go of the emotion, deal with the fact, but it takes a very positive emotion to be able to do that. It takes the positive emotion of I can control my negative reactions. And that's a pretty positive thing to be able to say to yourself. Yes, I can see that I always like to think of it as the devil. I can see the devil trying to get hold of me here and make me panic. But I am bigger than that. I control how much I panic. Yes, nice try. It worked for a split second, but now I get to control it most of the time. Jody took control. Jody did not change her life because of panic. Jody said, we're still going on the trip for Thanksgiving, regardless of what the result is. We're going. You see, Jody, that's very healthy. I'm so proud of you for that. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but very few change themselves. And so I am so grateful to everybody at Dear Mama Sal who is interested in changing themselves. You see, that is what I like to believe is that's why we actually all get together. We understand that life happens. How we deal with it is our responsibility. Carol Burnett said, only I change my life. No one can do it for me. Now, Jody made a very important point on this one, which is she understands that only she can cope with what's going on, but she appreciates that it's made a little easier by having Lionel's support the way that he supports her, by having, my support and Lauren's support with her on a daily basis. That helps her keep her mind on track. Would that be fair, Jody? The same way as when my weight skyrocketed like that, I literally wrote to Jody and said, "How is this possible? You know what I'm eating. Um, you know that I'm keeping my carbs under 50%. How can I possibly jump that much?" And she wrote back one word, cortisol. And I'm going, what is that? And I still haven't researched it yet, which I'm going to do. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. All right? Think about that. The secret of change is not focusing your energy on fighting the old. I want it to stay as it was. I don't want my roof to leak. I can, if I focus all my energy on, oh, it's not fair, and how can that happen, and why didn't this happen? That's not helping at all. That is keeping me stuck. What will lift the veil, if you like, what will get me back into serenity is building the new, get it looked at, get it fixed, do the best you can, or admit the truth and drop the price of your house if you have to. Not something I want to do, but that is a change I may need to make. Anthony Bourdain, the late Anthony Bourdain, said, if I am an advocate for anything, it is to move as far as you can and as much as you can, across the ocean or simply across the river. Keep moving in our thoughts. Jody is about to move physically for a weekend away. I am aware that even when I get the house sold, there's a whole new level of stress coming at me. All right. But eventually I will sell the house. Eventually I will move. And then I will have the stress of unpacking. But how many of you understand? I am quite looking forward to that stress because it will mean that the rest of this stuff is gone and now I can get on with the rest of my life. And if I want to spend the rest of my life unpacking, that is my right. Maslow, with the hierarchy of needs, said, in any given moment, we have two options: to step forward into growth or step back into safety. You see, I don't think stepping back is safe anymore, quite honestly. For me, it's not safe. I will just create depression. Dealing with reality is safe for me now. Wow, I wonder if that makes sense. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I found out for me. Maxime Legrasset said, the larger the change, the more people will resist it. Thus, make it seem so tiny and trivial that people don't even realize it. Yeah. If you've got to change, do it one step at a time. It'll be much easier. You'll be able to cope much better if you're just coping with the next thing. Not all of it, not the whole elephant. Just take one bite and cope with one bite, because that way you're not going to overwhelm yourself. All right, Jody has asked me to remember to do the countdown, and that's something I'll happily do, Jody, when I find it. Here we go. No, where we don't go. There we go. I'm so glad that we found this. All right, so I can't do it in date order because it doesn't do it. Actually, you know something, Jody? I could actually. Oh, Jody's saying dealing with reality is my safety now. Yeah, she said that's a gem. So remind me on that one, and I will put it up as a quote. All right, so these aren't in the right order, but just get over it. Right? All right, so Easter is 4 months and 3 weeks away. Spring, for those of you like myself who don't do winter very well, spring is only 117 days away. Do you realize in 17 days, that is, less than 3 weeks away, we will be under 100 days. Daylight savings jumping forward is only 107 days away. That's a week away from being in the double digits, not triple. I love this. All right, now then, for those of you who understand what Mercury in retrograde is all about, the good news is we don't have another retrograde until February. I've added that one in, Jody. So let's steam ahead until. For those of you who are romantic, you have 2 months and 3 weeks until Valentine's Day. For those of you dealing with Christmas, you haven't finished yet. We have 32 days. I'm a little bit farther behind than I want to be. Oh, by the way, I'll get onto that for a second. We only have just over a week to get our overseas Christmas cards in the mail. And for the Americans, you have just 6 days left until Thanksgiving. I wanted to talk about how our plans get totally messed up. Jody's saying good. She likes that I've added in the retrograde thing into the countdown. You know, I was all set up that I am going to spend, 2 hours a day working on Christmas stuff. And, I realize I can take little steps and get myself on track. And I had it all planned that I was going to do some work with my silhouette cutter, the things that cuts out things. Okay, that probably doesn't make sense to people. So hang on, let me. Visuals are always helpful. So I've got a machine that can cut things out. Okay. So I was all set up that, okay, fine, I'm going to spend, I had it in my plan. This day I am going to start doing some cutting out for things. And what I found out was for some reason, uh, I couldn't use my other computer to do it. It was messed up. And I had to spend a day getting the program onto my loaner computer, which I didn't want to do. And then the upgrade was such and it wasn't working. I spent another half a day getting the program and its user to work together. And they did eventually. So, that plan, 4 hours of my Christmas planning time out of the window. So where I had this much, I'm now down to this much, And so, but that is life. And again, remember that is life, right? If you can't cope with that change. Now, how many of you know that somewhere along the line, I was going, go out and buy some Christmas cards? Seriously, why are you doing this? It would be so much quicker to just go out and buy a Christmas card. And I'm going, no, I will not quit because some of these are so cute. Don't you like this one? Love that. And this one is going to take a little bit of working out, but this one is like this UO is going to need to jump out a bit so that you get that effect. I thought that was great fun. I'm still working on them, of course. So the joy I get of making that stuff work is good for my soul, I believe. Oh, I'm over time. Do you know the clock on my wall is late? All right, so here we go. I'm hoping that you've all gained something about. My mind just went, I must have started the broadcast late today. Maybe not. I think I was watching the computer time, not my clock on the wall. Obviously, it needs a new battery. All right. So, guys, I'm hoping that you can see that we're all going to get shocks. It'll come in different levels. All right. It can, little shocks will still go through the same process. Losing your keys will still cause the same process if you're in a hurry. And to a big change, like Jody had, or big shock Jody had, or the fright that I had. All right. And if you can see that it's all the same stuff, it's just a matter of degree. How big a shock is it? And once you know that, for example, right, if you've, yeah, I don't want to get people thinking in worse things, but the truth is you can deal with it because you're going to have to deal with it, right? You can deal with it. Jody's saying I was a few minutes late. That is because, Jody, the moment I went to go live, you mentioned that you couldn't see um, the thumbnail anymore, which meant something had gone wrong in the YouTube situation. So what I needed to do was to go and recreate the thumbnail that allowed me to find a new link and get a new broadcast going. Because what I noticed, Jody, was that I had that problem with not being able to see the chat. It was worth being a couple of minutes late so I'd be able to see the chat. And so that's it. Now I'm going to go and deal with my real estate issue. That's my next step. And thank you for being here. I hope that it helped. This is Dear Mama Sal saying you will get shocks in your life, different degrees of them. You now know that keep practicing on dealing with it better and you will be able to be at peace more quickly. That is my hope for you and me and Jody and everybody else around. This is Dear Mama Sal saying bye bye for now.